Here we go. There you go. But welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to just go ahead and share my screen real quick and do my little song and dance intro. So welcome. This is home repair lessons or just a home repair session. This is mostly just Cristyna and I just talk about problem solving problems in our houses all the time. So we might as well put this to good use. It helps that Cristyna is a licensed contractor and realtor with quite a bit of experience. So I'm really excited we can share this with you tonight. I am Amanda Miller. I'm the executive director of the South King Tool Library in Federal Way. There's my email, director@SouthKingTools. If you'd like to get in touch with me, please feel free to do. And if you don't know what the tool library is, I'm really glad you joined us because there'll be some opportunities for you to figure out how to solve these problems with hopefully our help. We lend out tools for free. We promote barrierless access. Oh, two more people here. We will let them in. Yeah, and we lend out tools that we hope help you complete your projects safely, effectively, efficiently, and without that cost prohibitive factor. So come by and check us out sometime. We look different than in the background there. Go figure. And then those kids look different too. They're much older now. Here's the important part. Thank you goes out to Washington State Department of Ecology and the EPA Region 10 HRSC grant for providing us funding to allow us to bring this class to your home, room, bedroom, car, wherever you are, for free. And I just have to obligatorily tell you guys that none of the opinions, suggestions expressed during this class reflect that of the sponsor associated with the class or the organization, the South King Tool Library. They are surely the opinions or suggestions of the presenter, speaker. And if you have questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to us. So that said, that's all I got. Now I get to do the fun part where I get to pick on Cristyna. So Cristyna is the main reason that you're here. You don't need to talk to me. I'll talk you to death, but Cristyna is amazing. How can I pin you? How about that? There we go. Now you're there. I will let Cristyna introduce herself in whatever way you wish to, but she's fabulous, wonderful, amazing, volunteer, passionate, supporter, do-gooder, too much sometimes, but very talented, very knowledgeable. Cristyna Winters. Here you go.
Hello. So I am at a house I haven't worked on yet, and they were enough to use their property. Can you hear me okay? It just occurred to me I had the phone quite a ways away from my...
I can hear you.
Okay. They were gracious enough to let me use their property because there are several things I think that would be a good display. So today is primarily about getting ready for winter. Now we're coming out of that sunshine, beautiful time, and we're getting into that place where it's going to get windy, it's going to get stormy, it's going to get wet, potentially icy, and some dangerous things can happen the fall of the season. So this is to kind of clean those things up, get those things in order so that when winter does get here, it doesn't really take you by surprise so much. And there's a lot of stuff just walking around the property. Now, because this class is so late, though, I know it's still really early for most of us, but the sun is starting to set. So there's some stuff that I definitely want to show you, and then I'll probably just camp it here on the front porch to finish any questions and answers. So there's been a lot of gutter talk, the kind that actually needs to happen, I guess.
I was gonna say in a good way, not the
Sitting in this neighborhood, there are multiple different types of rooftops, multiple types of gutters, multiple types of situations. I don't know what I can film. I mean, and again, I am losing daylight, and it was raining this morning, and then it did start raining again about an hour ago. So originally I planned on going up on the roof, but because it rained enough, I'm going to pass on doing that right now. So is there anything anybody wants specifically for me to point out before we lose daylight, or do you want me to just do my thing?
Question about gutters.
Yeah, there's lots of them.
I'm Patty. So there are a ton of companies out there selling gutter covers, different versions, different styles. Some are very inexpensive, won't last. Some are really, really, really expensive and still won't last. Other than getting your gutters cleaned twice a year, any other recommendations for, should we be doing gutter covers? Shouldn't we? Just because I know that they get filled.
So first off, it depends on what's falling in them. So pine needles, of course, would require a different something than big leaves.
Gotcha.
I mean, so it's kind of a where your gutter at and what's getting into it. To be honest, the actual best answer is to just keep an eye on your gutter, clean them regularly. The gutters can be useful or cannot be useful. It's probably just best to clean them out. The other reason cleaning them out, then you're keeping an eye on your gutters. Frequently, when you go to a house, their gutters are falling, or they've got holes in them, or they just storms, they're not attached well anymore. So if you were actually cleaning them twice a year or having them cleaned twice a year, you'd be able to see what kind of condition they are. Are they still holding up? Is there any problems with the eaves? Kind of, you just kind of keep an eye on them. It's potentially in your best interest. I'm not going to say don't get a gutter cover because I don't know, again, your exact leaf issue. I'm going to go ahead and turn the screen real quick and I'll see if you guys can see any of the stuff that's around me. Don't play, not like this little corner here that's kind of problematic to me, but so right now, here's a neighbor's house and see how they've got these bushes, but really the best thing to do for your gutters and for your roof is to just keep all of the debris and away from your roof. So in this case, most of these little bushes aren't going to cause any kind of leaf damage. Can you guys see that? Okay.
Yeah, we can see it. It's a little blurry, but yeah.
Oh, you know what? I know exactly what that problem is now that you mentioned it. Amanda, I'm going to put my video off if you want to talk to them for a moment and I'll fix that blurry problem.
Yeah. You know what? I was thinking about some of those gutter covers actually can prohibit you from being able to clean your gutter really effectively because you won't be able to see underneath it. So I know I've seen several different, I went to the fair and they have the leaf guard folks, are there, and there's a lot of different methods. We were actually just talking about this, Cristyna and I, because I have a torch down flat roof. We don't even have gutters. So we have downspouts. And at one point I put a screen cover over those to stop the onslaught of debris going down the downspout. And what ended up happening is that pine needles still got through because I have a giant fir tree or fir needles sitting above my roof. So it really didn't do the job. So opening that up, and what I found out was actually the French drain was the real issue. So it's hard when if you don't know your systems, like if you don't know if your gutter feeds into the French drain, if your French drain is clogged, that can be an issue leading all the way back up to your roof. Sometimes that is an issue that leads to flooding right around where your French drain should be draining out effectively. I also just kind of have a pet peeve against French drains, but I won't get into that. Yeah, Cristyna, were you ready? Again, I keep talking about gutters and downspouts, but I don't feel like
there are worse things to talk about. So, okay, can you guys see better now? Here's the house we're looking at. Okay, so for me, I just have my little window now, and Amanda, you're the big screen. Are you guys seeing this picture in a little screen, or are you seeing a big screen?
All right, let me try to unpin myself. I don't know how I did that.
The problem is, isn't that little, then I can't see it. I'm like,
All right, I'll pin you again. Here we go. Let's see, or spotlight there.
okay.
There we go.
So this is the house that we're actually using today. But you can see from the neighborhood. So see how this house has just your regular old-fashioned traditional zoom. Oh, that's not the zoom. I'm hitting zoom, but it's not zooming in. It's the zoom for the Zoom call. So that's your classic, traditional. And then over here we've got a little bit different. See how it's got that extender cap, and then here we've got just your little standard farmhouse style. So there's different gutters and different systems. These connect. That's just going straight out. And then of course you've got your bigger houses that have a more complex system as well. So this one is coming up and down. Can you see that coming down the side there?
Mm-hmm.
It's nice that they're in red, isn't it? A little on the obvious. And so in this section, they just have the one little part there and coming down. So there was a question about how much gutter cover if you did go with a gutter cover. And the answer to that question is how much gutter do you have? So you're going to go with your linear foot. And that's going to tell you, like across the side of this house, there is some gutter down there running towards the back half. And then there's just this little piece here, but there's not where the pop out is. You don't need to do the entire distance of your house, but just kind of check to see where your gutters are. Again, my first recommendation though is to clean them twice a year, and that way you can keep an eye on them. If you do have a problem, oh, that's what I was showing you over here. If you do have a problem with them getting clogged, then you do want to look at what's getting into them. So this house just has a couple of little bushes. This one's got a bigger tree. So this house is going to get some bigger, leaves that are going to clog faster. And then we've got pine needles going on back over here. So what kind of gutter cover do you get? You get the kind that works best with what you've got going on. So that's my answer on that. Any more?
There was another question about how you would get to that like super high gutter reach.
I don't know if you guys can see this. Please zoom in, but I just noticed this house actually just has chicken wire over their gutters.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just chicken wire. There may have been at some time a tree. There is not a tree up against this building now, so I don't see any need for the chicken wire. But that's what they're using for gutter covers. It's just chicken wire.
Yeah. But what do you recommend about somebody that maybe has that's a 2-story house? I mean, that's going to be pretty high up in the air. I know we have some ladders that are pretty high, but what are your thoughts there?
I definitely recommend having, if you're going to go into a house like this one, see that's the long skinny ones. That's your normal house. That's your long skinny tall ones. For something like that, I would probably make sure you have someone who's comfortable height. And then you would use an extender ladder. Just the kind that you pull that's going to basically A-frame against the building.
Yeah, there's not, to my knowledge, I mean, there are some specialized tools for cleaning gutters, but things like pressure washers or extension poles for like attaching your hose to do that, that's pretty much the only thing that comes to mind, other than surely getting up high enough that you can physically grab the leaves out to throw them down. And the issue with those is that you can, just like anything, you can pressure wash that away. You could rip a hole in your gutter, rip your gutter down.
That was actually what I was thinking, is that you could, if you use the wrong pressure, it could get unattached.
Yeah, so there's just a lot of possibilities when it comes to that. There's a couple questions that came up too. But I did want to ask if there was a tree like next to that very tall house, second story, getting the debris removed, of course, is the biggest priority. But then the other thing is moss. That's inevitably where they go with the questions. How do you treat moss? There was a question about the use of baking soda to prevent moss. I have an opinion, but I'll let Cristyna go first.
Zinc, copper. There's several, don't use, Amanda and I were talking about this too. Don't use a chemical on your roof, please. Just environmentally, just don't do it. The rain hits your roof goes in your gutters come down, and then they get into the ground, and they get into the groundwater. You know, there could be pets, there could be all kinds of stuff. Cleaning them by hand, you know, just going and scraping it. Again, it's going to have to go specific to your roof, and I'm not there to see everyone's roofs to give you an idea of what to do. If it's just a little bit of moss, you know, you can maybe, they have things that are designed specifically that are environmentally safe to help prevent, but they have strips. See, like, okay, so this house here, one that we're looking at, yeah, you're not going to get up on that roof. The homeowner is not going to get up there. I told them that I would today, except it rained. Now I can actually see, I'm going to flip this. There is a little bit of moss going on in this eave, this peak. So that makes me think that maybe the rest of it needs done, but it's not going to be that bad. I've definitely seen and cleaned off a bunch. It's important though to make sure that you keep your moss under control, because then your roof is going to start to rot. I'm going to show you right here on the fence. So I am running out of daylight, so I am getting a little bit nervous. Let me kind of give a walkthrough real quick before we use lose the light. And then I don't, please post questions. Please post questions. I don't really want to cut anybody off.
Some more questions, but mostly dealing with inside. So I wanted to let you do what you want to talk about outside, and I'll come back and answer the question about baking soda too, because I want to talk about that in a minute and more in depth.
Okay, I'm flipping the camera. Again, this is the time of year right now to get your outside under control before winter hits. So this is a fencing. You guys see that? And what happens when you get this wet, and it's going to get wetter and it's going to stay wet, is it starts to rot the wood and deteriorate. So the same thing happens even if you have, you know, not just regular shingles, but your roofing synthetic stuff. The same thing. If you get a bunch of moss on there and it sits there and it stays wet and it's going to deteriorate it much faster than if you keep it under control. So again, this is the time of year before winter gets in. You can see that this is all, none of this is treated anymore. It was at one time, so that beautiful color, and now it's just worn. And so this, I would probably want to sand this down before restaining it. I don't think I would even stain, but you can tell down here where the wood is starting to get rot. So if you leave stuff untreated outside, see all these, so like most of your gutter covers are not gonna, but if this is something that's gonna be falling, that will probably fall through most of your gutter covers. So like his chicken fencing, chicken wire that he's got on there, that's definitely gonna fall straight through there. Another thing I wanted to point out is check this out. I know we all love blackberries, right? But when you have bushes and plants up against wood like this, and especially untreated wood, again, you're looking for some real problems. If you leave it there year after year and you don't cut it back and take care of it, that's going to be very, very problematic. Now I'm like in a hurry, right? I'm losing daylight. So one of the things was bugs. Bugs love little spots. And this is a great place right here. Look at that crack. That is a wonderful place for the bugs to crawl in, make their little homes, pick at. So this side here still has some caulking on it and some sealant, but this side is worn. And you can see where it was here at one time, and now it's not. So before you get into winter and wet, where you're not going to get a sealant to dry, now is a really good time to go clean that stuff up. Just take like a brush to it, clean it up really good, and then put a good sealant on there. Here, again, we've got the moss, right? Love the Northwest. I am in Portland, not up in Seattle, but it's still the Northwest. But so this is a better sealant that they used here. This was probably done after the fact. This is more like a roofing sealant, whereas this was clearly a cosmetic. I mean, it's a sealant, but it was done to color for cosmetic reasons. Hi. And then here, I know you're thinking concrete doesn't get much damage. Hi, sweetie. But when you get water, moss, I mean, it starts to rot here. So this has been patched, but this is a concrete. The water has accumulated, dripped down through here. Here's another bug happy zone. Right underneath here. Isn't that gorgeous? It's beautiful. But this has been patched a couple of times over, and then it's going to keep needing patch. That's just part of it. See these? So when you're looking at your house and getting it ready for winter, you want to be looking for stuff like this. Another thing I wanted to show you guys, which is really important. Okay, so here's his drains. You're going to want to make sure you get all of this stuff cleaned out. It's going to come back. It will. But you still want to clean it. Come over here. This is where I was really getting nervous about daylight. Okay, so we all know that you have caulking on your windows. It's keeping the water and the moisture out. In most cases, you would have a caulking strip through here and a caulking strip through here. Now this is going to be a little bug haven, but if you have windows, so these are new windows. You can see that. But this window actually goes through all the way. So this is a kind of a cosmetic strip, and it does give them some shielding. But this window doesn't need the caulking. You might want it, right? Because there's little, little bug land there, or a place bugs would love to stay. But it's not required. It's the newer type. See, in like his siding, this is sealed all the way through. So it doesn't have any, but it doesn't need it. So if you go out and check it. Go out and check your house, and you're like, I didn't see any caulking here. I didn't see any caulking there. Do a double check and run through. So this is going to have some paper strips, some flashing, some other stuff going on. So this is actually still solid, even with caulking. Now, if it doesn't go all the way through, and you can see those, like, especially if you feel drafts, then you need to touch your caulking up.
And we have a nice infrared thermometer that can help you detect those too.
Yeah. So something like this was put here primarily for cosmetic reasons, right? That makes a nice little line. Isn't that beautiful? This is also a really nice place for hornets, bees, spiders. So when you do I'm using the word a lot, apologize for that. When you do your decorative stuff, keep things like that in mind. So here's the flashing. We talked about leaks at some point or another. I can't zoom this picture. I keep reading that. So this is the flashing that hangs over your window. A lot of times if there's an awning or something that pops out, they forget that flashing. So if you're getting leaks, make sure you've got some flashing over your doors, over your windows, things to prevent that. You're also going to, when you do your outside weatherization, you're going to check the weathers and make sure your netting is still up at your rooftop too. You've got vents in your attic, hopefully you have vents in your attic. And I don't think you can see that. They will pick at it, and eventually it'll come off, it'll go away. For the sake of protection, you can actually just pop that on the outside too. It's just to keep things out. On the inside's better because they can pick it back off again. But a lot of times birds and things like that will nest at particular times of year. So you just have to keep them from nesting in there during those times. So when you're doing your winter check on your house, make sure that you check all of those and see if any of them have been pulled apart, busted off. If you hear flapping in your attic, there's a good chance that your netting is bad. And you could use, I've seen multiple different types, but you want a netting. You want the airflow to be there. You just don't want the critters to crawl in.
And even that little recess, I've seen them nest just right in there because it's warmer. Anything that's closer to your house is going to be slightly warmer. So you can get mice and rats and all kinds of things nesting there. Squirrels even. And then the dryer vent is another place. Oh, and then I see a perfect example of what you need to do right there.
Again, you might want to clean the cobwebs off first. They obviously don't do a lot of outside stuff, but yeah, these are really cheap. It can save so much damage. So all you're gonna do, they come.
It's slightly to the left, Cristyna. There we go.
Sorry. Yeah. The next one, if I'm actually gonna be, I'll get rid of the cobwebs. I don't know if that creeps anybody out. Actually, it might creep them out, but I just use my hand on them. I'm thinking about it. But yeah, the next one I wanted to do some more hands-on stuff. So Amanda and I are planning, and you should have gotten what time of day would you like this?
Yeah, we'll do that in just a couple minutes, the survey to just be with the next session. Yeah.
But that'll be more about the inside. This is about the outside today while we still have sunlight and while we still have weather to do outside work. Okay, I'm probably not gonna get this off, and these come with a loopy thing. And you're gonna put that over here. Now his, as you can see, is very oblong, so this was
That's what I was saying, yeah, he was rubbing his eyes, but I mean, he's awake.
what?
I think someone just had some static there, but
Oh, okay. And then it has one of these clippy things or something really similar. So this, when it's winter time, you're gonna, of course, unscrew all of your hoses, drain all of your hoses. If you can, roll them up and put them inside in the garage so they don't get frozen. If they do freeze over the winter, just let them de-thaw. I've put them in, buckets of water, whatever. But so then this is gonna go over here without the hose. And then you're just gonna close this up on it. Yeah, this is why sometimes it's nice to have somebody else, right? Oops. So this has got a pincher system. Gonna push this in. And then I just pulled this and pinch that, and then it just pops right on, and it'll stay there all winter. And they're really good to stay in place. And there's many different variations, many different colors, many different companies that make them. But you do want to make sure that you disconnect your hose. And for the next one in the winter, conservation, heat conservation, we've already done videos about how to defrost those if they do freeze. Okay, so go around your building, check where can something be living, where, is this, and again, this is just normally, I was going to show you the caulking that's been split apart because I just assumed, but no, his is actually fine without that. And underneath this is going to be a sealant. It is a newer, older house. So here's one of his vents. So you're going to want to check all of your vents, make sure that they're still in good condition, make sure that they're still bolted, that everything is as it's supposed to be. You're going to want to clean all of that stuff out. It's going to come back, don't get me wrong, but you just want to kind of keep it clean and keep everything draining. So his drains, he's got a French drain system. You can tell usually if there is a basement concrete, they're going to have a system to try to keep the moisture from not flooding inside. So his comes in here, this goes in here, this goes to another pipe that's been trenched and then been rocked over so that water can go and then it drains away from the house instead of bringing it. So another thing I want you to take in mind and consider is, do you have under porch access? So if he had a cat, that cat would love it. Opossums are gonna like that. Raccoons are usually too big. Mice are gonna love that. Any little critter is gonna like to just nestle in there. When winter comes, that space is gonna be warmer than, over here. So you're gonna potentially, if you have a critter area, make sure that you get that closed off in one way or the other. Or, we're in the city. I don't see him closing that off, but he's probably gonna hear something under there and then deal with it at that time, which is an option too.
how would you block something like that off? I mean, you could use predator wire or like chicken wire.
To be. I think in an ideal situation, it would be to build a step here, right?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I moved. Yeah, so I mean, this is actually, because there's children in the house too. So that's kind of a pretty good stretch. So I think ideally, another step here, taking it to the ground would be.
Or even like backfilling it, bringing in some
Yeah.
concrete or rock.
But being in the city, you know, they don't have a lot of predators. So again, you're gonna wanna make sure all of your drains are clear. So I have seen this, see, this is great with the French drain that it can actually be hosed all the way through. One thing that I've seen in houses over and over and over again, and it's generally in seniors, but it can be very problematic because where the spout comes out, they'll have like potted plants and things like this. And so what happens is the water doesn't actually get absorbed into the drain. It just gets puddled because they have all of their decorative things. But you want to make sure if your spout is open and isn't seated underground, that spout actually can drain out into the water, into the ground, and not just puddle where it's at. If you have fencing, again, this is a good time to get it stained so you don't get rot. See, this would be a great place for the neighbor's dog to come in or whatever critters. So make sure you get all of this stuff sealed up. Any staining needs to be done. This is already starting to rot. So I might even put like a board across the bottom, seal that up better, get that stained before you completely remove the wood. Blackberries, again, they love to rot things and crawl through them. Oh, here we go, right here. So this isn't that bad right now, but as this gets thicker and thicker, it's going to start breaking apart that wood. And wood's getting expensive and replacing your fencing. Oh, here we go. So you don't want this to happen, right? Look at how thick these trunks are. So if you go through and you've got something like this, make sure you take care of it right away. Cut it, break it. These I don't mind poisoning personally, but you want to catch them before they get to this nice, thick, completely snaps your fence apart zone.
And unless you can, a lot of those usually originate in your neighbor's yard. So
Yeah,
you
that's-
have to just cut them as far back as you possibly can. And then, yeah.
So this is actually a great example of what moss will do to a roof. And that is the neighbor's house, but that's why we want to make sure that our moss stays under control, because it will rot and deteriorate. Because that's, you probably can't see it, I can't get close enough, but that is the synthetic rooftop on there too.
So there were some kind of specific questions. I don't know if you want to, if you're ready, Cristyna, if you wanted to do that, or if there was anything else. The first one was Yamini. I think they've come to borrow things. Yeah, there's an alternative. I was going to say there's other like waterproof bags that I've seen people put over their space too.
Insulated as well.
Yeah, insulated too, so it stays warm. So they mentioned that there was an opening behind their fireplace, possibly a smoke vent that they can see the light from on the outside. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Oh, it kind of got garbled there. Hold
Yeah,
on.
I did.
There we go. All right, so they said there's a possible smoke vent, and they wanted to know if they should be closing it during the winter for insulation. I don't know if you froze.
Is it a wood fireplace or is it a gas fireplace?
I mean, did
You
you
said
want?
it's a smoke vent. I'm just wondering, is it a smoke vent?
It's probably. Let's see if it's a wood fireplace.
Okay. I think you're gonna have to actually talk to or look to someone. That was another thing that was on my list of things I wanted to bring up, was wood fireplaces that get used for wood. Those really need to be cleaned regularly, and you really need to have somebody take a look at those and make sure, because you can kill yourself and your family.
Yeah.
Pretty
They said
easily.
that it was similar to the one that you just showed, like the one on the outside of the house. So, but I agree 100,000%. Like you need to have your fireplace kind of evaluated. If you are moving into a place that you've never had a fireplace before, it's new to you, you should have somebody look at it professionally, because carbon monoxide poisoning is really very easy to have happen. And so some of those flaps and the firewalls and things that they install in them, can degrade over time, which can cause leaks or cause the opposite, which would be your heat, you know, your heat escaping. So, but if it's like the one that you showed that was on the outside of the house, then it should remain open. Or what it was that connected to, do you know?
Sorry, I was looking at the chat room. Which one?
That I'm not sure. Maybe it might have been that it was a vent that's attached to,
Stove.
yeah.
I think one is for the kitchen and one is for a dryer. So, because there's a couple vents out here.
So none of those were probably attached to a fireplace.
No. Mm-mm. No, they don't. Oh, do they have a fireplace? Actually, now that you've brought it up. If there's a fireplace in here though, they don't use it.
And it could be, I mean, a lot of places now they have, you know, figurative fireplaces where it's an insert or, you know, it's something that isn't necessarily normal,
Yeah.
old school. But I was thinking maybe the big metal box piece that you had shown, was that for a dryer vent or was that for a,
I think you're right. I think that might be an insert in this corner over here.
yeah.
And it says hot. Where is it? How
Yeah.
do you? Oh, I have it turned. I don't do a lot of these. So is it something like this?
Possibly. Yes, they said that's
Yes, that's. Yeah, you shouldn't see any light through there. So you're probably going to need that casing replaced, and it needs to be resealed.
yeah. So it looks like
Yeah.
it's a full metal piece there because yeah, it gets hot, so it's going to be transferring heat, and so plastic wouldn't work to patch it. You probably need to have the
No.
coating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have specific. They have specific sealants and adhesives and things like that that do that. I don't know that I would even trust Googling something like that because you could be dealing with gas lines. So if you're doing something like that, you should probably call someone that does fireplaces. I worked on a house recently that had one of those that I could not detach. They had sealed it inside the piping. So unless I were to cut the piping and re-pipe it, it wasn't moving. It wasn't going anywhere. So that's kind of a good and bad. You can't really work on something like that, but it's sealed for life.
Well, and
So-
the sealants and stuff. So
I would.
I fixed the seal. There was a little gap between my fireplace and my ceiling, and so I just needed to make sure that I had heat. They have specific caulking that you buy for different things. You have waterproof for your bathrooms, those sealants, and then they also have heat relevant ones. So not just the color and it's also the composition of the sealant itself that you need to make sure matches what you're doing in the project realm.
Okay, there is actually, now that I was walking around, there's a couple things I really, really, really want to show you guys. Before you get into winter, you need to locate your water main shutoff. These open up fairly easy. Usually you can just stick your finger in there. They have water shutoff attachments that you can do. Oops. And you don't want it to look like this. You don't want it to be overgrown. You want to be able to get in there and get out of there. I mean, they've clearly checked this recently, but you want to be able to make sure you know where your water shutoff valve is and make sure that you can access it. Like check to see, some of them are really deep in there, so you have to buy like a pole thing to turn it off. This one you can just reach in with your hand, find your water shutoff. Make sure that you can turn the water to the house off. And you want to do that before winter, because if you have a pipe that busts in your house, if you can't shut the water off to your building, the amount of damage will just be extensive. So if you have a pipe that busts over winter, it gets frozen or this and that, shut your water off, shut it all off before you destroy your entire house. The other thing I want you to take special note of before winter gets here is if there is an emergency, your house catches fire, something, and things get icy, what's in your way? What are you gonna have to deal with? I would make sure that you have some salt or kitty litter or something. So like, let's say, they're in a hurry, right? Maybe mom goes into labor and they're trying to get to the car real quick. You could slip on this really easy. So I would make sure that you have something to put down to keep that nice and cleaned up. The other thing I want you to, find your water vein just in case, hopefully you never need it, but all it takes is that one time. You also want to check your drain. I did do a walkthrough earlier. So the drain for this, like if this flooded, if it started raining really bad, is way, way down there. So you can see all of these leaves and all of this debris. If this clogged up here, they would just have a whole flooding through here. So you want to make sure that this stays clean. If you can't keep it clean or you don't want to, right, because it goes to the neighbors, at least locate where your street drain is at. So if you do have a problem, you know where to take the water to. Because in this case, I'll admit, because of the house and the shape and the road, I was looking for the drain over here. So, but it's actually way down there on that end.
And if you live in Federal Way, you can report that with the Eyes on Federal Way app. That will come out, and yeah, they will clear the drain. And there's actually some good Samaritans in our area that go and clear the drains on some of the major roads, but it's a big problem that we don't take into consideration until it's an issue that we have to deal with. But
yeah. So those are the things to keep an eye on before it gets to be an issue.
This is a fun. Oh, go ahead. I'm excited because I have a question that I know an answer to, but.
Well, I know when I go to a house that has a lot of extensive water damage, and I'll say something about how long did it take to get the water shut off, and they went, "What?" And I'm like, "Huh?" And they said that no, they just called the 911 plumber. They just let the water run for like a day or two. And I'm thinking, well, now you have everything destroyed. Whereas if the pipe busts, and you just turned off the water, you don't have all of that other floor damage. You'll still end up with some damage, but not near the extent if you just turn off the water right away. Okay, go ahead. What's your question to answer?
The question, Chris asked, how do you get sap off of a deck that's composite? And I have a sap bleeding tree at the moment. And while I don't have composite decking, I have a 3-year-old who does not like to wear shoes. And so we have mastered getting sap off of his feet, which I can only imagine it probably works with the composite deck. And that is alcohol. That is actually, I use hand sanitizer now. So I just spray his feet with hand sanitizer to get the pitch off of his feet, which usually also entails a lot of other gross things that have now stuck to his feet. But do you have any other solutions to sap? Oh, she said it smeared the sap. I bet so the big pearls that drip and are big globules, I have to scoop those away until I only have that like little film. But what do you think?
How about Dawn detergent? I've used that on my hands when I get it, and it comes right off.
Yeah, I think it really depends on, again, how much, like Amanda said, if it's a big chunk of it, yeah, you definitely, you got to get it down to almost nothing where it just has that little baby residue. It looks like she just popped up that she was afraid to put salt on her composite decking. Now I can see for wood decking, and especially stain, it'll take the stain right off of everything. For a composite though, I would check with your manufacturer. A really good alternative is always kitty. I use kitty litter for all kinds of stuff. Now that's something you do have to sweep up later, but it will get stuck in the ice. And so you'll have better traction for longer. So that's an idea too, but I would check your manufacturer for your composite and see what they recommend. Trying to think of successfully getting sap.
The other thing I
have.
Oh, the thing that I use for,
no, go ahead.
Instead of buying like a brand name thing that's more expensive, lighter fluid that you, not like for your, well, I don't know if it's the same that you would use for the grill, but the things that you use to refill refillable lighters, we keep a a can of that. My husband is an avid collector of vinyl records. So he buys them and they have little stickers on them. And to remove them really carefully, he uses just a dab of that lighter fluid with a cloth. And then, kind of goes over that. I've used that on the sap as well on different surfaces because that's an adhesive. But the other trick to that is applying it multiple times. So it kind of dissolves the adhesive, the sticky particles, and then you have to use it again to remove those as an oil. Just chemistry, I don't know.
I will have to admit, I think I just spend the money and get stuff designed to take off sap. I don't think I've ever really, because I know that it's annoying and obnoxious, and I think I just say, yeah, I'm just going to use the stuff that's designed to do that. So
even the
good.
Dawn, even the dish soap didn't work on the toddler feet, which is why it led me to the hand sanitizer, because even so generated is what happens to the hand sanitizers after it's sat for too long. A lot of us have had hand sanitizers now for a couple years, and so you'll have it be, it's more liquidy. You'll notice it's more liquidy, and that's the alcohol separating from the other materials that are usually used to stabilize and make it more viscous. So as your hand sanitizer generates, you can still use it. It is more liquidy, so it doesn't stay on your hand as much. It'll drip off. But that's the kind that I prefer to use on my sticky, sappy parts, because my grill cover is another place that I usually get a lot of that. And so I'll just wipe it with the hand sanitizer. I'm not sure what the most effective way. I feel like it's also probably specific to the tree because they have different composition and the thing that they're dripping is a little different. So those are just maybe ideas to try.
Yeah. Unfortunately, if it's something for me personal, I usually just abrase it off, just rub whatever until the top layer of whatever it is that is gone, and then the sap is gone with it. I'm trying to think on my car. I just get the stuff that's designed to take off sap. I'm sorry. There's some things that I mess with, and some things I'm like, yeah, if this works, I'm just going to do that. It saves me a bunch of time. So I'm sorry, I don't have any real good advice about that.
Yeah. There was another question about how to properly scrape oil sealant and apply a new one on some kind of chipboard material fashioned into cedar-like siding from early 2000s. This is really specific. Karen, I might need you to explain this more. And that is very specific. I'm not sure I understand it.
Sure. Sorry. It looks just like cedar plank siding from the outset, but if you inspect it closely, it's not. It's like chipboard, like how do the composite chipboard? I don't know.
Like OS,
Yeah.
Like the plywood type chipboard,
Yeah.
but it's made into these cedar planks. And I know they discontinued it somewhere in 2015 and earlier, but I'm afraid to scrape it like you normally would and recaulk, right? Like a real cedar plank. You would carefully scrape along the, side of the grain, et cetera, right? Anyway, any ideas, any tips, I don't know what to use. Butter knife?
Yeah, that was actually my first thought, was maybe cut the siding high and tight. If it is the press board type, yeah, scraping it might take off, but that may not be that bad of an idea.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. That's the word I wanted. Press board.
Yeah,
And it's old caulk, not oil. Sorry, typo. Go ahead.
My brain actually translated it into a non-paintable sealant. That's what my brain translated it into. So I didn't actually, because I was just picturing if there were that, what would be applied to it. If it's thick enough, go ahead and scrape that top layer off. Just be careful while you're doing it, but maybe try to take a knife. Here's right. Clearly this has been done. Somebody's cleaned this up and scraped it off. But if you,
Cristyna,
you can't see anything.
no, it's kind of.
Did you say
There we go.
Okay. Uh,
Is it my connection or her? Sorry.
I think it's hers. I think,
Okay.
it's kind of sounding funky.
Oh, that's okay. Somebody else can go.
Well, it sounds like she was saying to try to remove part of it, and I did read that wrong. It says old sealant, but it was a sealant for the for the
Yeah, like caulk, like
Yeah,
regular
in
old
between-
caulk,
in
right?
between
In
the
between
things.
the,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just that it's pressboard and it's, I could see where the sealant's pulled away and I'm worried that like, you know, the goodness to heaven that once the rain gets in there, it's toast. I mean, it's pressboard. That's going to soak up like a sponge. So anyway.
So can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you
Okay.
now.
Oh, wow.
So,
There she is.
If it, oh, the phone was way away from me. You may not have heard me because the phone was down here and I was up here. That could have been. Okay. Yeah. Not this. I don't do videos very often. For the tool library, I think is basically it. So if it is an outside designed exterior press board, it is probably treated and saturated in something. Like when they put the press board together, it probably had something mixed in with that would keep it to waterproof it. It might have been discontinued because whatever it is that bound it could be toxic. You know, live and learn.
Right.
If
Okay.
it's not disturbed, problem. You said 2000. See, to me, 2000 seemed like yesterday, but apparently that was 22 years ago.
I know.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah, and there might be, I'm not sure where you got it from originally, if you can reach out to them again or try to find, because they might have something that they can adapt to it or add to it to make it fully sealed, because nothing like a press board is gonna, anything you put on it is just gonna get sucked into it, or it's
Right.
gonna sit on
That's
top
my
of it.
worry.
So you can't stain it, or or it's gonna sit on top of it like a caulk kind of situation. So sorry. The
That's
other question
okay.
you
Thank you.
had was about properly covering the crawl space, and the best practices. What kind of crawl space and where is it?
Oh, this one looks almost like a window well, like an like a window well on the outside, but it's not. It's just it's like a crawl space access under the house for about, I don't know, 2.5 feet. So it's just a crawl space access point under a home. And I just wondered, does it need to have a slope? Do you use like shingled plywood? Do you use metal? I'm sure there's a zillion designs, but I just wondered if you guys had any feedback on that. I'm sure
No,
it has
as
to
far
be
as that goes, you
sloped
could
for the water and rodents, of course. I'm sorry to cut you off there, Cristyna. Go ahead.
Oh no, well, again, I haven't seen it, so I don't know. Because you're talking about sloped, your ground should be sloped away from your house, so that.
Oh,
so
it's
that-
one of
but I've
those
seen where
metal
people's crawl
U's.
spaces are.
Yeah, it's just like a window, like a window well in, for a basement window, like a in case of a fire, you crawl out. It's kind of like that, but shallower. So it has a metal rim,
Mhm.
and I've seen others, around like it. I just don't know how to describe it properly. Hope it makes sense to you.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
The last one covered, I just used press boards depth. So that should be angled and sloped so that any water caught out away from your house and into the ground, over top of the ground settles and things get dinged and things. But I did actually just kind of put a piece of ply. It was
Did we lose her?
I think she said T11, but
Oh, I think we lost her real quick. Hold on.
Dadgummit.
She's back.
Not sure what happened there. Hear me?
Kind of breaking up a little bit, but
Yeah. The only thing that happened is a car pulled up in front of the house.
sounds like aliens are there. So I'm trying to think. I don't think I see. Oh, how to block under the porch. That was another question. Oh, that's we talked about that when you were walking around earlier. And I think, you know, adding another board to that is another option, like adding another piece of wood under, just attaching it to the bottom, cutting it to the size of the landscape is probably another option. But Cristyna, can you hear us?
And I can hear you guys.
Not, it's really choppy sounding. So
Okay, is it getting better now?
a little bit.
So the only thing that happened is the neighbors had a car pull up, and while that car was sitting there and revving its engine, so that's kind of interesting that it would cut my connection. Though I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if moving away from the house. My phone says the reception's great, so I don't know.
Did anybody else have any questions that were burning to ask?
Yeah.
Gail, did you have a question?
Yeah. Can
Yeah,
you
go
hear
ahead.
me?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I have a leak over part of my roof, but when I've gone up on the roof, and it's a torch down, when I've gone up there, I can't find anywhere that looks like there's a hole or anything. I bought some of the, I can't remember what it's called, but the torch down material that you paint the roof with to maintain it. And so I'm gonna go up there and put that up there. But is there any good way that I can identify where the leak is originating from?
Do you have access to your attic?
Not over that part of the house.
Yeah, I don't have an attic in my torch down roof.
I have a little section over the main part of the house, but this is in the rec room, and there is no attic in that part.
There's nothing between the, so I'm trying to picture.
There is a wood stove, and so I'm wondering maybe if it has something to do with where that connection is, but there's nothing visible that I've seen.
Water is kind of an interesting thing. It takes the path of least resistance. So where the leak is and where it's flowing to could be completely different locations.
Yep.
So I did, there was a popcorn ceiling house, lath and plaster. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. Anyway, so the decision was, instead of trying to coat it, to just pull all the lath and plaster and the popcorn ceiling down, right? Instead of encapsulating it or whatever, we're just going to take it all out. And when we did that, there were multi roof leaks that were exposed. So they were leaking, but it was catching the lath and the plaster and not necessarily dripping into the house. So until we took that ceiling out, he didn't know that it was leaking. There was a time when I was at the house that I saw some streaking in the wall, and I said, how long has that been there? Because that made me think there was a leak someplace. But they didn't notice. And something like that happens over time, slowly and gradually. So it wasn't obvious. But when we took the ceiling out, you could tell where the leaks are. I don't necessarily recommend going and taking your ceiling down though. So work pretty messy.
I was gonna say, like Cristyna said, water travels by osmosis, which means that it doesn't have to follow any rules of logic. It wants to be next to itself and the path of least resistance. So if it isn't going down right where it's able to break through there, it'll travel. Think of the moisture that collects in the bathroom when you're taking a shower, that if you've ever had moisture collect on the ceiling, you forget to turn the fan on, it doesn't just flow right down. It forms globules and drips further, away, right? So
Right.
what can happen is you definitely have a vent for your roof is like my roof.
Yeah.
So you definitely have a vent for your bathroom. You definitely have a vent for your dishwasher if you have one of those. You definitely probably have a contact points for your chimney and your gutters, your downspouts that go in, and any of those points can be where your moisture is coming in, and it could be just traveling to the lowest trench point of your roof to then collect and drip, and there's where your leak starts showing up because it's been collecting over time. So without, again, ripping your whole roof apart, checking all of those potential contact points, which could be inside, right? So like your roof, the flashing on your chimney,
So
could be up.
do you guys know what we're talking? You can't see that now. It's too dark. Do you guys know what we're talking about when we say flashing?
That's the part that surrounds the chimney,
Yeah.
the metal on the roof.
So
Yeah, there should be flashing at every joint in your roofing, to a chimney, to another section. That's what earlier when I was showing the neighbor's roof, they have a great piece of flashing right there, between their
like
porch.
There's my version, my visual. It should go like this. It should taper down, right? Like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I would, check your flashings first. Another thing that it could be is, even if your flashing is in place, if it's not caulked down, and so maybe you've got water getting behind your flashing.
Okay. I'll check that.
Or a lot of those perch down roofs just use that tar as the flashing. And so if that's rotted, then you could have that leaking within there too.
And I've definitely seen those pull away over time. I mean, that is a definite possibility.
Would just putting more tar over it be a temporary solution? I have the okay.
I think you can buy a tube of that tar roof sealant for like $6. It might be up to 15 now, but they have those tubes. I've used them on other stuff. I don't really do roofing, but I have used them to seal other things and cracks and stuff. So they're not that expensive. And the thing is it doesn't hurt to do it regardless of if the leak is there or not, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it could be preventative for next year or the year after. And then if it does also seal your leak, because that's where it was leaking from, it's a win-win. I mean, it can't hurt to do it.
Yeah.
There was there's another question about a roof leak too, which different designs, everybody's got different houses for the most part. Is there something I could put at the top of my roof above where I have a tiny leak?
Okay, you don't have to do that. I think she just pretty much answered it.
Okay, all right. Okay. Yeah, so even the vaulted, ceilings, even a pitched roof, you still have to have flashing, and just, think about like how water can flow around things. The design of shingles is so that it flows down, but that also means that it flows on the sides of the shingles, and that means that it flows underneath. So,
another thing I want to bring up. So, people all the time ask me, how come? And I'm like, it's been there for 30 years. Yeah, it's, things, again, I'm wearing glasses more and more nowadays, and my eyes weren't always bad. Now they are. Some things last for a long time, and then one day they don't. So the other thing behind your siding, and I'm not going to pull the siding out to show you, but if anybody has driven by construction, they have that tar paper, right? That they put behind the sidings and underneath the shingles and all that. They have that paper stuff. It's a kind of a meshy materially. There's different kinds over the generations. That stuff actually does deteriorate over time and decompose. So depending on how old your roof is, your protective barrier, and it gets really bad around the edges of the houses, around windows, around anywhere where there has been a seam, So maybe where your roof connects to your roof, wherever they've had to cut it or splice it or something, and it's just part of life sooner or later. And then the older your house is, I can't say less quality, but you know, they have more synthetic things that do better protections nowadays. So it could be a question of the protective barrier underneath your roof or underneath or behind your siding or something has it's lived its life purpose.
Just
We
the
can't expect.
heating and cooling is a deterioration process. So, you know, you have our cars, right? Like you look at those things and you can see visibly your tires expand and contract. And that is, you know, essentially a better quality thing that's probably constitutes most of your house. So,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, that's
One of the things I really like, and I know I should have fixed this already, and I keep leaving it and I keep leaving it. And I was going to leave it for next class, but I'm going to go ahead and poke through the door. So, you know, we all have trim.
I did want to mention the thing about, we didn't go back to it, moss and roofs and,
Oh, yeah.
and
And
yes.
baking powder.
Yes, and
Okay.
baking powder, or baking soda. So baking soda is a salt. Vinegar is a base, right, or something like that. These are still chemicals. These are still things that can affect the pH of your yard and things. And I've learned a lot over the past couple of years doing these classes with so many different teachers about yard care and everything else. I've recently just learned too how detrimental those things, even though we look at them as less chemically complicated as say like moss out or the brand name stuff, but they still can really be impactful to the biome and the area that you live in. So if you live near water or a watershed, right, flowing into the Puget Sound, there are certain regulations that you should check for. What they recommend to not use. Salts can affect lakes tremendously to completely disbalance the pHs and throw them all the way off. But also, if anything you put on your roof is going to flow down, like Cristyna was saying earlier. If you put an herbicide like moss out on your roof, it is going to flow down. If you have a water catchment system and you water your plants with that herbicide laced water, you're going to put that into your plants. So you don't, you know, think that it's isolated, it's going to stay there. But ideally, you do need to have a reliable way to combat the things that could, like Cristyna showed us with the roof that was, you know, completely deteriorating. Manual scraping, removing the moss itself, and then choosing products based on their longevity and their lack of impact into the place that you live is the best bet. Talking to King County Noxious Weeds, I've come around to some pesticides and herbicides because they are formulated to be just potently effective to those things. So as long as you're going with what the minimal amount and what is recommended for your area, that I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what it is, but probably it's just a Google search away to know what is recommended for the area, your watershed and that whole thing. So anyway, that's my TED Talk on baking soda and roofs and moss. And I love moss because I'm a weirdo. So that's just
Yeah, but you don't put it on your roof.
not on my roof. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So one thing I want to show you guys is I don't know how many of you know how your house is put together. So behind here's the door. I don't have this. If I don't turn that, you're never gonna see this. So normally, I know this was actually take a look at that and I didn't, well, I did look at it. So your doors and your windows are put together like this. So normally there's a piece of trim here that covers that. And then there's a caulking that creates a sealant. But they're shimmed in here and squared out.
I'm not
This is
seeing
some
the same
for
way I think you
weatherization.
want to show us. Oh, there we go. All right.
Yeah. So the reason that doors and windows are not necessarily sealed straight onto the wood and they're shimmed in is because of, like she was just talking about, you've got with the cooling and the heating, the wood's going to shrink and expand and shrink and expand. That's why, doors like now, it sticks, and it didn't always do that. This is swelled. So I had recommended to maybe just pull some of these shims out, just so it's not on there so thick, maybe the little one here, and then that'll loosen up. I don't have anything in my pocket, even my car keys.
And that's
then
also
that'll loosen up the area here. So your windows like this as well. So again, this is a place for buzzer stuff, but usually, for weatherization, you're going to put something in here. Well, you're hopefully whoever it was that built your house did. And then you're going to have the trim over it. And then you're going to caulk that trim, put a sealant on both sides of it. So, yeah, since you were just talking about and again, this is supposed to be like this, and this stuff doesn't really spray very pretty ever. Right? So that goes all the way through. So you don't have any air. So when you had mentioned that vent leaking, that's what I was thinking. Oh yeah, put a sealant in it. But then when it was possible hot, no, you don't want to put just anything in a hot zone. So see, again, that's to compensate for the wood swelling and shrinking over time. And that's the natural process. That's just part of what wood does. It gets wet, it gets dry, it gets warm, it gets cold.
That's also the argument for sweeps and using what are those called, Cristyna? Can't think.
Are you talking about just the insulation?
Well, like trim, like around your door as it expands and contracts.
Yeah. I was going to cover that in the next lesson, but those come. That's what we were going to do. How to keep the heat in the.
That's true. Yes. Well,
but that's also something, because there are a few different kinds. I wanted to actually kind of say, okay, there's this and there's this, and this is how this is installed, and that is how that is installed, and some of them go in really, really easy, and some of them are a little more irritating.
Well, I just realized we're losing people quickly. It's almost 8 o'clock, so I want to respect everybody's time. But I did want to ask, I have a poll for you guys, just to ask you a couple quick questions, because we want to do this again and get more pointed on winter, cold weather stuff. Future Sound Energy has talked to us about doing energy conservation. And I'm really passionate about just trying to address what problems we have locally. So I'm gonna ask you just a couple questions. What day of the week and what time works for the next session? Cristyna brought up a good point. As we were going through this, we saw it's harder to do live kind of looks when it gets dark out. So earlier might be better, but we also have to have, a balance of what people's time and schedule looks like. So if you can, just let us know, if you would prefer what day of the week of those choices and what time of day. And then if you can let us know how you heard about us, so we can make sure to get the word out again. And then I did see, Chris said, heat monitor thing, do you guys have at the tool library? So we have a infrared thermometer that's super helpful. We'll just have to put it on a reservation list, but it's fun to just walk around your house and look at the temperature difference between the window and the wall. I like to use it in the tool library to see how significantly hotter it is in the little metal box than it is outside, because it's about 10 to 15 degrees hotter and colder sometimes in the metal box. So but the infrared thermometer, it's just like the one you might use. I have one at home for my bearded dragon, and I have one that I use I use the same one, but it doesn't touch the bearded dragon. And then I use it to get the temperatures of food. So that's a weird association, but you get it. It's infrared. It doesn't have to touch anything. You just, kind of point and shoot. Yeah. But we have a nice one. You can go around your house and decide where you want to caulk, and then you borrow a caulk gun and just go wild. But awesome.
And sometimes about caulking is sometimes you can see when it's peeling away, and sometimes you can't. So, I mean, you kind of have to just do it periodically anyways. See, there's some other stuff for neighbors' house, but that's neighbor's house. It's not that I have authorization to show you stuff.
We don't
But,
need to get too yelled at. We already got Zoom bombed the first one. We don't need to do. Ooh, cheap ideas for weatherproofing. Did you talk about the window?
that was, I was gonna do all of that stuff in the next class.
That's
Like
true.
you said,
Yes.
we
Well,
were closing-
weatherproofing. So, Chris, what do you mean by weatherproofing? What kind of things are you thinking of?
I'm thinking about like sealants. I'm thinking about like you talked about for the doors, the insulation, the sweeps.
Yeah.
Doing the plastic covering for the windows. I mean, in a perfect world, you could get new, double panes, like the windows that are here that don't really need as much sealing and will keep the heat in and the cool out. But yeah,
Excuse
if
me,
you don't
but if you're talking about doing stuff for outside, like next week, the weather is supposed to be really nice. When is the
No.
next?
Oh, we're looking
Yeah,
at actually November. I'm sorry for like a deeper for winter stuff, but
Yeah, like weatherproofing the windows and stuff. Would that be
Yeah.
done inside?
Yeah,
Well-
that would primarily because I'm not gonna have any daylight because I don't know what time it is right now actually. But if we started at 6:30, it's not that late. So it'll be primarily doing inside stuff. That's why we're doing the outside today. So
Mhm.
outside, you're gonna want to check your caulking lines. I did kind of cover that. And if you need it, if you don't need it, if it looks like it's pulling away, make sure you do. Double check your flashing, make sure it hasn't rusted, rotted, or
Yeah.
the screws come loose, that it's still in place.
yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of why we did the outside today was because we're not gonna have the light to do it next month.
Right. And it's gonna start raining now. I mean, our as in my email, I described that I was like, our winter is so weird because it's fall and then bam, it's winter, but it's also not really. It's still just raining. And then all of a sudden it's really cold. So a lot of what the questions we were trying to focus on today were about water and rain and like the other variables like bugs and leaves that are coming in.
Yeah.
But if you guys had specific questions about like, like Chris, other than like weatherization, what did you mean by your question? I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll. Thank you guys so much for answering those questions for me.
I was just thinking like cheap hacks, like, I mean, putting the towel in front of the door
Oh,
where like the air is
yeah,
coming in underneath,
no,
or lots of blankets, or, just literally everything.
Yeah.
Because I don't have a lot of money, but I might be able to like move stuff around in such a way that I'll not be cold.
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm a very, very, very firm believer in that in my list of, and what else should we talk about? I 100% believe in closing off rooms that you're not going to use. I'm all for that. Taking
Yeah,
like
see,
a
I didn't know about
heating-
that. I thought that might stop the airflow or something.
Well, it kind of does, but if you're looking, you're living on a budget and you've got an older house and it's drafty and you can only afford to heat some rooms,
If you've
Yeah.
been to a turn of the century house, which
which I
from
work
the-
on a lot of 19th century homes.
yeah, the East Coast were full, you have so many doors, and it's because that's exactly why you had one heat source, which was centralized, and usually it was between the kitchen and the main room, right? So in
Yeah.
the winter, literally families would sleep in the main room because that was the warmest thing. But you have that way to kind of work the airflow. Heat also just rising, right? Like that's a good thing to keep in mind. So as you're planning out, like, if you,
Bunk bed. No, I'm playing.
what was that?
I said get bunk beds.
Yeah, get beds and you can be a little bit warmer. But if you have like a split level house, you want to close off the basement to not heat the basement or the lower level. So you're heating just the top floor. And those vents, as we're talking about, coming inside and the heaters are starting to come on, cleaning out the air vents, just vacuuming or borrow a shop vac and stick it down there as far as possible. I have kids. My sister did an awful things when she was little and put, popcorn down the register of our, heater and air thing. So
Did they pop? Just curiosity.
no, it was already popped. It was surely just to get me in trouble.
Oh, okay. I was thinking like Jiffy Pops. If you left it in there. So what was it? I just read that question now. It just escaped me. Yeah, no, I definitely am familiar with you're on a budget and you just don't want to waste a bunch of money heating things you don't need to. I'm all for towels or an old shirt or old jeans, or, anything is better than nothing. Oh, that's what it was. Amanda is kind of the resource guide. So it was a question about programs, and that's what for Windows, I think is really important if you can get some better one. And the government does run energy assistance and, home checks to see where there's
And
problems. They have a lot of programs.
I made a mental note, and that's what happens to mental notes, is they're not very reliable. But there are new programs that are coming out right now, especially to incentivize the upgrade of hot water heaters and heating systems to be maximum efficiency, and windows and solar. Go ahead.
Hot water heaters are huge. People, they're like, oh, and it's like, okay, it's 20 years old. It was supposed to pop at 10. If you can upgrade your hot water heater, do it. Because those, people, they just assume that they'll run forever, and they don't. And when they go, there are issues. Yeah. So yeah, if your hot water heater is over 10 years old, think about replacing it. And if there's a program to help you fund that and get a good energy efficient, definitely.
Cristyna, you've been in my basement. What would happen if my hot water heater?
Yeah, you got issues, hon. You got issues.
There's a drum set and a recording thing. Like, I'm doomed. I do not want my hot water heater to ever go.
Yeah, or your vent system is just, wow.
It's incredible. My heater is still it's a 1960s heater, and it's classic, but it's still going.
See, people do that. And actually, was it last winter, Amanda? My heater went out at my house, and Amanda came and brought me batteries, because it was just simple. Batteries went bad, but it went out when we had that really bad snowstorm. Yeah. But I didn't have a way to get batteries, so Amanda was kind enough to bring them to me, and we did do a video about that, how to check them, how to see, so maybe before the winter gets here. Again, if you are on warranty, though, I say that over and over again in the video. If you're on warranty, call your warrantor. If you have a deal with your heater people or your hot water tank people, have them come and look at it, and schedule them now to come and look at it. Don't wait until there's a problem. Don't wait until there's a backlog. Right now is perfect. They're not overwhelmed yet, and they're like, oh yeah, we could do that. Have your batteries changed out. Just anything you can do preventative for that, just in case, just to make your winter go. And the other thing that helps is if you do something like that and something still goes bad, at least you go, oh yeah, I looked at that. Instead of going, oh, I should have taken the time. Oh, I should have. Oh, I meant to. And just make your list. This is a good time to make your list of things that you should probably look at.
Or it rules out. It lets you rules things out. So, like the leak in your roof. If you go ahead and you work, you get those flashings tightened up, and you do the thing, at least that's not the problem. At least that's not the issue. You can start ruling out some of the things. Barbara, totally right. Fire alarm batteries and carbon monoxide detectors. That is definitely something to invest in if you have a wood burning stove, if you have gas, anything. And
they make them, they're pretty cheap now. You can get the 2-for-1, where it has the carbon monoxide and the smoke detector all together. I definitely recommend going that route. It's, so you don't have this here and that there. But yeah, changing your battery, because people don't do that. And they always, when the batteries go dead, it happens at 2 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning. They never go bad in the middle of the afternoon when you're like, oh yeah, I'll change those right now. It's
or
when
if
you
have a baby, it's exactly 5 minutes after they fall asleep. So
yeah, exactly. Maybe 5 minutes and 2 seconds, but yeah, it's generally in that 5-minute mark.
Yeah. Well, we only have just 2 minutes left before 8 o'clock, or not 1 minute. Anybody have any final questions to ask? Did I miss anything? We are planning this for November too. So it looked like the feedback we got was Wednesday evenings, or the other 2 Sundays or Fridays were also good options. And then evenings, since we're going to go inside, would probably be viable. And I'm so glad you guys know about the tool libraries newsletter. So yay.
Yeah. Hey, so one thing we do have to take into consideration in the evening zone is that if I'm in somebody else's house and they have children, I can't really go too late. Just a heads up.
No worries. We'll figure out a good time, and we will make sure to let everybody know exactly what that will be, because we're thinking November, just because it's already almost October, and before you know it, it'll be November, and we want to have some time. But if you have more questions, definitely reach out.
Yeah, make a list. Yeah, make a list.
And make a
But-
list.
Again, most of this stuff is better to catch before it's a problem. So,
Yeah, so prevention, absolutely, and then looking for problems before they're problems, right? So like those using that infrared thermometer, we have a moisture meter too. That's a great tool.
great. Yes,
that- Yeah, if you have that leak and you think that it might be starting to come down the wall or wherever it is, that's always good to try to map it out. But yeah, thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I know that there's, so many things we could have covered, so many questions we could go over. And I'm just glad that the True Library is here. We can provide, a free resource for people that are trying to do that. And yeah, if you have more specific questions, we can definitely correspond and get you Cristyna's contact information. She is super busy, but other than
yeah, I actually, and I'm going to be planted in Oregon now for
a little while.
Yeah.
Sad, but we know how to get a hold of. I know how to get
Yeah.
a hold of you. Mwahaha.
we
But
still have Zoom. We still
we
have
still
Zoom.
have Zoom, and we're gonna do this again. So yeah, thank you guys again for
Okay.
joining us. I'm gonna go ahead and stop.
Thank you so much.
If I can
Okay.
figure out how to do
Bye-bye.
that. I don't know that I can. Oh, there we go.